And we are live with another episode of the Tailored Property Wealth Podcast. Today, things are a little bit different. We're up in Brisbane. We're in a different studio, and we have our first guest of the podcast on, Bec Turner from Ray White, AKG, a couple of different offices in the Brisbane area. And we're going to be talking all things property management today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Are you able to get into, I guess, a little bit of your background, what your position is at Ray White Marsden, just to kind of kick things off so everyone knows who you are?
Yep. So I am head of the growth team for the Ray White AKG group. We have 3 office locations, Marsden, Daisy Hill and Brookwater. So basically my role is I work with investors who are looking to purchase investment properties. We obviously grow the property management portfolio within our offices, and just basically work with landlords who wanting to sign their managements with the agency. We've got 2,500 or just over now, 2,500 managements.
Some big numbers.
Big numbers, yeah. So we've got quite a big team across the 3 offices. I think we have about 40, maybe a little bit more in our property management team now. Yep. Really big team, and it's exciting, and we just keep growing. Good.
Yep. So there's kind of a team that I guess you have as part of what you do as, I guess, more of the onboarding, the relationship piece, and then there's obviously a team of property managers.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well, isn't there?
Yeah, so I had the growth team. So I've got an associate under myself. I've got an operations manager, so she more or less looks after the team. I've got 2 BDMs as well, so business development managers, so they're out there bringing in the properties as well as myself. And then we've also just had another person join the team last week, so he's coming on board as an associate BDM. So with that associate BDM role as such, they're more so kind of out on the ground, doing like the pre-purchase inspections and things like that for our clients, and like pre-settlement. So they're kind of out on the ground doing the running around as well as the leasing side of things. So not just growing, but we will grow them into the roles where, they can be signing managements as well.
Yeah, love it. And I think you just mentioned before, off air, before we started, that you had done some pretty massive numbers for this month. Mm-hmm. Do you want to share what they are?
So we are about to, we've just clocked over 81 new managements as of today. So I was only messaging my boss the other night. I'm like, yeah, cool, we're at 70 now. And he's like, let's make it 80. So I'm like, yeah, cool. So we're already there and plus 80. And he's like, let's make it 90. So still a couple of days to go of the month. And
you reckon you'll get 90 or not?
Yeah, we'll do it.
Love it. I've sent through a few this week, so hopefully that will help add to the collection.
Make them sign tonight. Need this done.
Yeah. So we've probably been working together, I would say, for, I think it was 3 to 4 years. And I guess Bec's really good at just building relationships with our landlords, educating landlords when they come on board, organise lots of things throughout the process. And we're going to kind of touch on just some of the really important parts of property management today. And the first one that we want to kind of discuss is the importance of a high quality property manager and what the risks are if potentially you're just out there and you're trying to focus on just maybe the lowest rate that a property manager's charging, because I think a lot of people get into trouble with that. If you buy cheap, you buy twice sometimes. Yeah. So I think that's really important if you want to kind of discuss high quality versus low quality.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that you said about the fees as well. So especially in our market, we get a lot of interstate investors purchasing up here. I think we had a meeting this morning, and I think the statistics were around about 73% of the landlords that have recently purchased have purchased in Ipswich.
Yep.
So, and they've all come from interstate. So one thing that is common knowledge is, in New South Wales, or particularly around Sydney, management fees are really quite lower down there. So people automatically assume 5-6%.
Yeah.
So it's all about with landlords educating them as such as to, like going with the cheapest agent. That's obviously not the best option now. Where we sit in terms of our management fees, we're not the cheapest. We're not the most expensive either. But as an agency, we know and we believe in the value of our service that we deliver to our clients. So that really comes across when I am speaking to clients, and I know what we do for our clients. So that always transpires. And like I said, it's all about educating them that, you got to go with the quality over just a number. I was only chatting with somebody yesterday and like, oh, I'm going with this agency. They're only charging me, 6.2%, and they're not charging this and they're not charging that. And I said to him, like the difference in terms of management fee is actually such a small amount. And, like when you actually add up dollar value, it's $5 a week. I mean, you spend more on a cup of coffee.
It's the same with people looking at interest rates. They get so caught up with just a number sometimes and
Yeah.
don't really understand,
Yeah.
I guess, the reality of it.
Exactly.
And I think that's something important to touch on, because sometimes I help clients purchase potentially in Brisbane and then maybe in Adelaide or Perth, wherever it is. And state to state, those charges per property manager are definitely different state to state. So it is important to kind of adjust your expectations depending upon which marketplace you're purchasing in.
Yeah, literally. If I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, oh, management fees are 5% down here, I actually wouldn't have to work.
Yep. Well, you haven't purchased a property down there, so you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then I guess sometimes people say to me that they potentially want to manage the property themselves and things like that.
Yeah.
So what do you think some of the risks are if someone decides to potentially do that? Because so many things can go wrong in property management, right? And if you don't know the ins and outs of legislation and all the different bits and pieces and obligations to the tenant, you can get yourself into big trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing. People think that, they're going to try and save some money by doing it themselves. So if I do speak to people that say that that's what they're considering, I'll basically go back through them and be like, okay, cool. So about the legislation, especially with the recent legislation changes and things like that. I'll ask them if they have had the experience in self-managing properties, because, it's not as much as just getting a tenant in there and collecting the rent. Like there's so much legality side of things and liability as well that landlords can kind of come unstuck with.
Yeah.
It is, I guess, like I said, with the management fees, it is such a small price to pay just to kind of know that that property investment is safe.
Yeah.
And not have to worry about yourself. And sometimes as well, I think, especially with a self-managed property, you often see landlords, try and advertise on Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that, trying to do the cheap and nasty. But they don't have the ability to do the screening of tenants like we do as agencies. So, they don't have access to ticker and tenant watch list and things like that. So I do see a lot of people that become unstuck with that. And especially as well, when you do purchase an investment property, sometimes they think, oh yeah, I'm going to put my daughter in here or whatever, and it's all right, I'll manage it yourself. But I can guarantee you, I've been doing this job for over 20 years, and I hate to say it, but friends and family, they are always the first ones to do the wrong by you.
I see it all the time when we're looking at properties and it's their daughter or someone who's taking advantage of the situation, and then their parents who own the property are in a really bad financial position where they might need to sell the property or whatever else. So it's good to have that arm's length. That peace of mind that you've got an expert in your corner managing that property. You can help automate things. And what people don't think about is if you have to get someone out of the place for whatever reason, you have to go to tribunal. How are you going to go in there and do that yourself when you've never done it before? I wouldn't like to go to tribunal.
Trust me, I didn't like doing it back when I was managing properties myself personally as well. It's not a fun thing to do, and especially when you do have people that are not in the greatest situation and you have to get them evicted from property. So it's hard for landlords to do that.
Yeah, it's just things to think about as an investor. I guess getting into the next thing, and we kind of touched on that, is some of those really important things that you want to do. So when we purchase a property as a buyer's agent, there's heaps of due diligence that we do to make sure it's a quality property in a quality area. But then once the reins are handed over to you and you're then finding a tenant for that property, then there's a lot of due diligence that you kind of do to make sure that tenant is a quality tenant, they've got a good history, all that sort of thing. So what's some of the things that you kind of analyse to make sure it's a good tenant?
So where the one thing when we speak to any of our landlords, the biggest thing with us is we never just approve somebody and get them into the property for the sake of going, hey, let's get this property rented, first inspection. anybody can do that. But at the end of the day, is that first person going to be the best quality tenant? So we always want to make sure that we're putting the best tenant in there, making sure that they meet affordability, making sure that they have good rental history, doing all of the proper background checks. So I see so many people that, they just kind of approve an application, or you see all of these agencies boasting out there, rented first inspection. Like, yes, it does happen with us, but we never ever want to sacrifice that quality of a tenant. With our searches, we are very, very, we've had people say that it can be a little bit invasive as such, but we want to make sure that we're getting that best person. So one extra step that we do, which I know a lot of agencies don't, is we actually do Barclays checks, which Barclays is a debt collection recovery agency. So we flag that, as well as Ticker, which is a tenancy default database. One thing which we have actually seen a big increase in is with applications, people are actually dodging up payslips. So we're seeing that. So they're dodging up to show better affordability. Exactly. So, because we're checking these things day in, day out, there are things that stand out to us when we are flagging that. But, we want to make sure that we're doing our proper checks, and, if there's alarm bells that ring, we'll flag that and actually not proceed with it.
And sometimes doing that day in and day out, that's where you start to pick up on those little things that don't particularly make sense. Whereas if you're going and throwing up your clapped out house on Gumtree or Marketplace or whatever, and you just have someone come to you, you don't have any structured system to really know that that's a good quality tenant.
Exactly. And there's a reason why people, I wouldn't say target, but there's a reason why people specifically look for these Gumtree and Facebook Marketplace owners, is because they know they don't have the accessibility to do the proper background checks on them. So they are potentially tenants that, you willingly wouldn't want in your property.
And you're just putting your hand up for that quality tenant at the end of the day, right? If you're not doing it properly, for sure. Yeah. It's one of those things. What I would just quickly wanted to touch on, the importance of finding that quality tenant, right? And I say this to clients as well. I'm not going to find you a property next week just to rush you through into a property. If you have to wait those extra couple of weeks, even potentially to find that quality tenant, it's so much better off than rushing a tenant in just to get paid. And then in 6 months' time, you've got this tenant in place that's doing X, Y, and Z, and you're trying to get rid of them. So I think that's super important, because there's property managers out there that'll just, found someone, put them in there.
And that's what we always stress is, sometimes it might take that extra week or a couple of extra days or whatever to find that right person. But I honestly believe that if you have that right person, that right tenant in your property, that's actually what's going to save you money in the long run,
100%.
rather than just getting somebody in there in the first couple of days.
It's just being proactive. One of the properties that we settled on for a client on Monday, I was speaking to him this morning. He has a tenant in place already, approved. What's today? Thursday. So that's like three days. So
as I said to him as well, right from the beginning as well, I was like, okay, just so you know, this is the process. He was like full aware that, he's happy to wait for that right person as well. And I mean, yes, sometimes it does happen. And, if we do see a really, really strong application that does tick all of the boxes, at the same time as well, you do have to move fast on those ones, because there's going to be other agencies out there that want to get that person too.
I said that to him. I said, do not overthink it. If they've sent it through, it's a quality tenant from the get-go. Obviously, check it out. I haven't seen it, but you want to take action, because sometimes clients fumble the bag a bit and they go and find another property, because the quality tenants are going to get approved multiple times, potentially, if they're looking at multiple.
We've literally had that happen. An owner declined it it was 2 weeks ago, actually. She declined it for a particular reason. She wanted to continue with her search. Nothing else was happening with the property. And then she came back to me a couple of days ago and she's like, okay, do you reckon that person still wants to take it? I'm like, 2 weeks has passed. No, they've gone somewhere else.
They've paid the rental truck, all the rest of it. So you got to move quick on it. It's like anything, right? Negotiating on properties too. Something I really want to get into now is, from your perspective, when we're looking at properties, is how we can add value to different properties, because that's kind of something a few of our purchases we've done recently. where potentially you can only get a certain amount, but if we do some small little value adds, we can increase that rental income, put more back in our tenants' pockets. So, and the property we went and checked out today, so we might be able to, I guess, discuss that one and what we were able to do when we purchased at 650, and then I used the Pest and Building as a tool to negotiate $7,000 off the purchase price. And now, because we'll get that adjustment on settlement in the client's pocket, we now have $7,000 to play with to go back, add some value to that property and hopefully increase that rental income.
Yeah.
So you potentially just touch on, I guess, that particular property and what we're kind of aiming to do.
So the good thing is, the client has been very open and they've kind of given me their ideas as to what they were hoping to do. So I've just literally gone through the property, had a look at it from my perspective.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, we will always look at it in a way, we're not going to go in there and say, okay, you need to do a whole renovation.
Yeah.
We want to obviously help maximize the rent, but obviously bear in mind though, as well, kind of keeping it to a certain limit. But little things such as, doing a fresh coat of paint, if you've got pink or peach coloured walls, that's a little bit dated and, not everyone wants that coloured walls, but just keeping things nice and neutral, and it just gives it a fresh life as well. So this particular property that we've just gone to kind of has old dated looking carpet, and the curtains are all, bright colours and not in the greatest condition. So we're literally going to organise some new quotes, get some flooring. We had the discussion with the client about potentially just doing vinyl flooring all the way throughout the property. It's a lot more hard wearing in terms of investment property. You're not going to worry about getting stains on the carpet all the time and having to replace again in a few years. And also look at changing the blinds in the property. So just doing those couple of little things is going to completely give the property a fresh look, make it look more modern. And people are very visual as well. So, people like things that look nice and fresh. So you're more inclined to attract a better quality tenant as well.
Yeah.
I think with the rental appraisal on that property at the moment, just basically in its original condition without doing anything is, 5 to 520. But if we look at doing these few little things, we're potentially bringing it up to around about that, mid 500 range. And, it's going to increase that value and not have to do anything there for a while.
Yeah. And it's some little things and potentially, let's call it maybe 1,500 per year in the pocket, which doesn't sound like much, right? But when interest rates are high and all the rest of it, it adds up, and then it's a progressive thing over time that higher rental income's there. I'm doing it on a couple of my properties, one that's settling tomorrow. It's in the clap house, the clap hole, I should say. It needs a major reno, purchased it really well, but it's just go through, do the kitchen, do the bathroom, paint it, flooring, same sort of thing. I'm doing one up north in Brisbane as well. Pretty much the same thing. So it's just freshening it all up once potentially tenants move on that might not have been looking after it the way
to attract a better quality tenant as well. I feel if it
100%
presents well. So, if you go into a property, like if we just put somebody into this property where there's, stains all over the carpet, you get a family that moves in and they've got a couple of little kids and they're just like, oh yeah, who cares? The carpet's already trashed.
Just sets that expectation, the standard. Yeah, 100%. It's important. I'm keen to get through that property tomorrow and take a look at it in the flesh. And just probably the last thing to touch on, and this is like a mindset thing for investors and landlords. People, they start to, things are going to go wrong with the property, right? It's inevitable. You're dealing with tenants, you're dealing with people. So like if you're in a customer service role or whatever, you're gonna deal with people that things are going to go wrong, right? So what are some things that you kind of see, I should say, as pain points with landlords or property managers that might go wrong? I could give you a pretty good example of one in December where something went wrong.
Never going to see that one.
Yeah. And I tried my hardest to do what I could with that one, but I can't fix a fence straight away. So things go wrong, right? So what are some of those common things that you see that you have to kind of be prepared and expect as an investor?
So obviously fencing is probably one of the biggest things that we do see. And probably second, more so for older properties, is hot water systems as well. I don't know why, but they tend to go all the time.
Yep.
In winter, right before it starts cooling down, people crank up the shower, get that heat on. And um, we understand that those things are obviously quite costly things. But as a landlord, you have to be prepared that there are going to be things that you are going to have to spend money on.
Yep.
So with us, we have access to a big, massive, wide range of trades.
Yep.
And the trades that we work to, we ensure that, they offer great service at good prices as well. And we know the quality of their workmanship as well. So, if they do something and something happens, they're going to go back and fix that under warranty. So that's the service that we give to our landlords and giving them the assurity that we have good quality trades. But in terms of the maintenance side of things, there is always going to be things that have to pop up. So I think as a landlord, you have to be prepared that there are going to be things and actually actioning them when they come up, because if you don't do it when they come up, it's going to get exactly, it's going to get worse over time, and it's going to end up costing more money in the long run.
Yeah.
Another thing that we do see, we have started seeing with the older properties as well, is leaks in bathrooms.
Yep.
It's probably a big thing.
Yeah, it's a big one we see.
Big thing. It's hard when you only have the single bathroom.
Yep.
But you have to do it. It can become a costly thing. And you get a bathroom renovation out of it too.
Yeah.
Freshen up.
And some people are like, oh, can I hold off on it? But then it's just gonna go through the wall. The wall cavity is going to be just drenched with moisture and all the rest, and it's just going to cause massive dramas. High risk for termites.
And especially the humidity up here.
Yeah.
It's very hot today.
Yeah. Oh, it's stinking hot up here.
So you want is mold in your property?
Yeah. Well, mold has been a common thing that I've experienced up here personally with a couple of properties. Sometimes I think it was the floods had a leak or whatever, and then some mold shows up. But fences definitely are one of them. Seen it in a couple of instances, and when there's so much rain, fences typically up here are like timber, so it just is one of those things. I, touch wood, have never had had a hot water system go, but something is typically like aircon units sometimes will go because they haven't had the service each 12 months, and I think that's something. When I was speaking to a client who we got a property under contract for, he's kind of worried, they're just selling it because the tenants are doing this or that. And it's like, well, if we get a quality property manager in place and get the property up to the standard that it needs to be, and it kind of is going to eliminate those things, and you can't control sometimes what the management has been in the past and being proactive with the maintenance and all that sort of thing.
We actually put on our routine inspection reports about the aircons.
Yeah.
A reminder to have them serviced, same with garage doors. So, we're always prompting our landlords to be better landlords and educating them on what they should be doing there.
Yeah, you just got to spend money to make money sometimes. And when you're going to the bank in the first place to get your finance, sometimes if you don't have your little cash buffers, maybe you talk to your broker and you get 10 to 15K in additional funds. So you got them sitting there. So if something major does happen, your hot water system or whatever goes, you're not scrambling for cash because you've got it there. Because what I find as well, some trades try and take advantage of investors and think they got heaps and heaps of money, but that's not typically the case, right? Typically, it's a mum and dad investor that might only have one or two properties, and they don't have oodles and oodles of money. So it's just something that when you're getting your finance in the first place, I should say, being proactive, just so you're being a better landlord. Because the way I like to look at it is that tenant is your customer, right, as a landlord. So you want to be able to provide to them. They're going to look after one of the biggest assets of your life. So I think that's...
Yeah, you don't want to thinking you're a slumlord or anything like that. Bad-mouthing people.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. So, if you're a better landlord, naturally you're going to attract a better quality tenant. And you're going to have that tenant longer term, which is always good, right?
Yep.
Ideal world, you want a tenant there all the time. What's probably just the last thing we'll touch on is... on an annual basis, some of potentially like the research and just the analysts on the property to then increase it in line with the rent, in line with the market, I should say. Yeah.
So every time we have lease renewals coming up for our properties, one thing our property management team always do is provide a comparative market analysis, or referred to as a CMA.
Yep.
So what that is it's basically a report. We'll have a look at comparable properties to show what has recently rented, because we want to help the client as well maximize the return on their investment. So a lot of agencies out there will only, they're very tenant-sided. So they don't want to, I guess, upset the tenant. So, they'll just go, hey, let's renew for another 12 months. Let's put a $10 increase in.
Yep.
But they don't actually, they're not educated with where the market is sitting. So what we want to do is it's not about jacking the rents up, but we want to help educate the landlord and show them where the property is actually sitting. So we'll provide them the report, show them comparable properties, show them the days on market. So, sometimes if a property is rented at, say, $550 and the market rent should be sitting around about $570, $580, sometimes we'll get landlords that come back and go, no, I want $650. But we'll show them that, this is where it's sitting. At the end of the day, we always work for our landlord and, we'll follow their instructions and guidance. But we want to help them get the most out of that rental return there, and we'll help negotiate a new lease agreement for the tenant. But it's, really important just to keep them up to date with where it is sitting annually.
And I agree. I see a lot of properties where the rent is far below where it should be. And I actually think that's kind of a disservice to the tenants, because if they all of a sudden, for whatever reason, need to move to another property or whatever, all of a sudden their rental income, they haven't adjusted to where the market is. So they might be living a certain style of lifestyle and then they can't make their payments. So
I'm literally dealing with, the team's literally dealing with that at the moment. We've got an elderly lady and it's been under rented for a very, very long time. And, it's got this new, a new landlord has purchased it, and he's kind of in this position now where he's like, got this elderly lady and, she can't actually afford any more increases or anything like that. So I think that agency who was managing it prior has definitely disadvantaged their previous owner in not putting rent increases in for a significant amount of years. So, you think that they're trying to help the little old lady, but now
she's in a bad position.
She's in not a great position.
Yeah. It's a catch-22, that one, unfortunately, especially when it's someone who might be elderly and she might not have any family.
Exactly.
Whatever the case is.
And it's a big jump for someone as well, people can kind of manage budgets and things like that with, like a $20, $30 increase. But when you're having to do like 100 plus increases, it's a big, massive hit to a family's budget.
Yeah. It's better, to stagnate it in line with the market. And just lastly, touching on, I guess, some of the ruling around the rental increases. What's going to happen there?
So that's just recently rolled out that the rent increases can only be increased once every 12 months. So it's actually attached to the property now, where it used to be, like per tenancy as such. So one thing that we are finding is a few properties, tenants have been given notice to vacate, potentially because the property's been up for sale or things like that. So with the new legislation, if it was previously rented at $500, and there's, say, 4 months left of that 12-month period, that actually has to be re-rented at that same rent that it was previously rented at for the duration, and then it can be increased in line with the 12-month annual basis there.
Yep.
So that's becoming, getting a few people a little bit unstuck there, but it's, every 12 months per property.
Yeah, this is why it's so important. Don't do it yourself, because you might make some errors or forget what it is and get yourself into some strife.
It's a big trouble. And now it is actually in the lease agreements, you actually have to show evidence as such. So when you're signing a contract, when you're doing a lease agreement, you actually have to provide the evidence on there when it was last increased.
Yep. That's good. Cool. Well, I think that brings us to the close of the episode, touching on the importance of a high quality property manager in your team when you're going out there investing, whether you've got one property or multiple properties. It's super important to have them in your team. So thanks for coming on the show, Bec.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you on the next episode.
Little levels. Thank you.